As we've seen, sponsors of these Winter Games include the oil company Eni, who you may not know much about. Well, they've got a website that obviously says they support the energy transition and aim to reach net zero by 2050. Or you could listen to Federico Spadini of Greenpeace Italy.
Eni is the major Italian oil and gas company, but it's also one of the most polluting and one of the major greenhouse gas emitters all over the world. It's partially owned by the Italian state, but it has a huge power to influence the energy policies of governments, especially the Italian government. And it's also doing a lot of greenwashing and sport washing, trying to associate their brand to important and beloved events like musical festivals, or in this case, the Winter Olympics and Paralympics. Also, Eni is the main sponsor, the title sponsor of the Serie A, the Italian major football league. And as people know, football is a very, big thing in Italy.
Facing an immensely wealthy and influential adversary, Greenpeace Italy and others launched a climate litigation case in the Italian courts.
Once a company is, condemned for the climate crisis, its social license, it's really impacted. So we decided to try to use a legal leverage to have some official statement, in this case from a judge, to make sure that everyone can know the responsibility of the company in terms of contributing to the climate change.
Eni's response was to launch a case of their own, countersuing Greenpeace and the other complainants for defamation.
This is what is called, using an acronym that is unfortunately becoming more and more popular, that it's called SLAP, which stands for Strategic Lawsuit Against Public Participation. So basically it's an attempt by someone with power, in this case a major oil and gas company, to silence criticism.
But Eni also asked for the case against them to be dismissed as it had no merit in Italian law. On this, in July 2025, Greenpeace Italy scored a decisive win.
The Supreme Court completely rejected this kind of attempt by Eni to question this. And they stated clearly that it's possible in Italy for NGOs, but also for, let's say, single citizens, to take in front of a judge, to take into the court a corporation for their responsibility in terms of threatening the environment and the climate with their core business.
The landscape of climate litigation changed again in October 2025 after a guilty verdict against another massive polluter, which is also a big sports sponsor. One of the lawyers involved in that case was Johnny White of Client Earth.
The French court in Paris handed down a judgment that found quite simply that TotalEnergies, one of the largest oil companies on the planet, had been misleading the public when it extolled its own virtues as a climate champion through claiming that it was a major player in the energy transition, claiming that it was aiming for net zero by 2050. The court stated that this was deliberately misleading consumers and was unlawful.
By the time of the misleading advertising verdict against TotalEnergies, the Italian Supreme Court had already given the go-ahead to Greenpeace's case against Eni for damaging the living planet. That opens two fronts against the oil industry.
We've seen this type of litigation explode since Client Earth brought a world-first complaint back in 2019. There's over 150 of these greenwashing cases globally by now. And what we're seeing also is that the European regulators are beginning to step in. They've done so against the airline industry. Clearly that is now sorely needed against the energy industry and the oil and gas sector in particular.
We hope that this can generate a sort of a wave in a certain sense. So other companies or other public events, both from cultural or sports or educational world or media world, they don't want to be associated anymore with someone that is, officially recognized by a culprit in a certain way.